Today we're going to talk about Aunt Irma and Uncle Sam. Who is Aunt Irma and who is Uncle Sam? Well, IRMA, which stands for Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, is what you're going to have to pay for your Medicare premiums throughout retirement. And that number is going to change potentially over time depending on a couple factors. And so we're going to talk about that today, but we're also going to talk about Uncle Sam, which is obviously tax planning. And how do we pay less in taxes? How do we pay less in healthcare costs is what we're going to talk about today. And so if you've found yourself and you're a diligent saver and you're going to find yourself with maybe $1 million or more, maybe you're that Midwestern millionaire we always talk about, that person who has been frugal, has Midwestern values, right? Is the best saver but the worst spender. They've been hardworking all these years, and maybe they've been some diligent savers and they've saved quite a bit of money over their lifetime. And so if that's you, you're going to find yourself with more tax problems, and you're also going to find yourself potentially paying more in healthcare costs. So in today's video, we're going to discuss that to ensure you can have a plan moving forward so you can keep more money in your pocket.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So my name is Joe Schmitz. I'm the CEO and founder of a retirement planning firm that's headquartered here in Columbus, Ohio. We serve clients all across the country, and we see a lot of people from this YouTube channel that have actually become clients of ours. And so we're more than happy to serve those people who have enjoyed these videos. And today we're going to be talking about this relationship between taxes and healthcare costs. And so let's just start off by talking about IRMA, like we talked about earlier, or Aunt Irma. And people don't typically like Aunt Irma. And the reason why is because you could potentially pay more in healthcare costs if you find yourself with a higher income, but you don't get better healthcare costs. You don't get better doctors or better treatment. You get the same coverage as everyone else. But the reason you have to pay more is because of how Medicare premiums are calculated, which we're going to talk about in this video here today. The other consideration we have to think about with Medicare premiums is that if you're 63 is when you have to start actually considering this. But in my mind, we need to start planning for Medicare premiums much earlier than age 63. And the reason why is because we need to get ahead of it. We can't just expect and say, hey, I'm not going to make any changes. I'm going to go status quo, and I'm going to find myself in a great position where I'm not going to worry about any Medicare premiums. I'll deal with it later. Well, you can't. You got to get ahead of it. If you have all your money in tax-deferred vehicles, when you take out money from there, when you take Social Security, when you maybe have a pension, you're going to find yourself hitting those Medicare tiers potentially, and now you're paying more in Medicare, and it may be too late to do anything in the future years. And so that's why it's important to get ahead of this. And so with this idea of 63, Medicare premiums look back 2 years to calculate how much you'll pay. And so if you are 63, you're not going to have to pay for Medicare premiums that year. But when you turn 65, they're going to go back to what your age 63 age was to determine how much you have to pay. And if for some odd reason, due to a life event, maybe you're still working at age 63, or maybe you sold your business and you find your income extremely high, you can submit a form to do a one-time appeal to potentially have that Medicare cost reduced when you are 65 if you are subject to higher tiers. That's something we do with our clients all the time. And right now, I better knock on wood here, but we are 100% in our clients submitting that form in order to get that reduced. And so something that is extremely good opportunity if that is applicable to you. So you have to fill out a form, and it obviously has to get approved there. So let's talk a little bit further about this Aunt Irma, and let's just give you more of a history of how this works and what we're looking like in the future, and some of my personal concerns with Aunt Irma. And the reason why is because healthcare costs are just increasing ridiculously. If you look around, you can see there's a high demand for healthcare because people are living longer, but maybe not necessarily as healthy, and there's not as many people that are there to give us care. And so because of that, costs are going to rise, and we've seen that over time. And if you look at the slide I have here, you're going to see that the inflation amount, that CPI-U, has been 3.27% historically. Now, if you look at Medicare Part B, it's actually increased at 7.39% over the years. Can you imagine that? Medicare has gone up over double what inflation has. The cost of healthcare is rising out of control is what these numbers are telling us. And then your Social Security is only going up by about 2.4%, which isn't keeping up with inflation, and it sure is not keeping up with Medicare costs. And then you can see the projected inflation rate that they're expecting of 6.17%, which is pretty close to what we've seen over time due to that high demand, due to the high need for healthcare is what we're looking at. And so something we have to understand here is, think of this Social Security check that you've gotten and you've worked for all these lives, right? You're set to get it here soon, or maybe you're already getting it. What comes out of your Social Security check is Medicare costs. And so if you find yourself with Medicare costs increasing and you find yourself in a higher Medicare premium tier, you may end up paying more for Medicare as we're talking about, but also you may not get any Social Security at all. You may get a lesser amount of Social Security, or maybe that Medicare amount starts to eat into all your Social Security, where you actually have to pay up beyond your Social Security because maybe your Social Security isn't high enough to cover that eventual cost of healthcare. And so this is a real concern that we're seeing people have, where they've worked hard for their Social Security for the past 40 years, and then they get to a position where it's going to get eaten up by healthcare costs, where they may not get anything at all. And so here's a little chart here just to kind of give you an idea of what this could look like over time. And so that green line there, that's to show the Social Security income over time. And so you'll see there, that's that 2.4% increase per year, right? That gradual increase that we've seen historically is what we're assuming moving forward. And then if we see that Medicare cost increase, that's the hockey stick increase that we could see, because remember compound interest. Remember what has grown your wealth so much since day one. It's by starting early and it's by saving. And you've seen that compound and continue to get more and more and more and more. Well, unfortunately at this point, now it's making a negative impact with compound interest, because the cost of Medicare is going higher and higher and higher with such a high rate of 6 to 7% increase per year. And then there becomes a point, if we look at this chart, 2048, where we could actually expect that Medicare cost to start being more than what our Social Security benefit is going to rise to, meaning we get no Social Security, meaning that we're going to have to pay up for some additional Medicare cost ongoing, is what this scenario would tell us. And so this is a real concern that we have to make sure to plan for. And so you have an idea of what these Medicare Part B premiums could be. So IRMAA can increase not only your Part B, but also your Part D. So Part A, that's no cost. You've already paid for that all your life. I don't know if I love saying that Part A is no cost, because again, like I said, you've been paying for it all your life. It's kind of like saying, I've been paying on my mortgage all these years, and now it's paid off, so it's free at this point. My house is free. Well, maybe, but you've paid for it for 30 years, so I don't know if I like that analysis or understanding. But this is only going to apply to Part B and D, is where you're going to be impacted based on your income. And so if you look at this chart here, again, remember it goes back 2 years. So if your yearly income in 2022, for example, was, if you're married, $206,000 or less, you're going to pay the base tier of Medicare. You're going to pay the lowest cost you could for that coverage. And then you'll see as soon as your income starts increasing, you could pay double the amount, triple the amount, quadruple the amount over time, just because your income is higher. Again, not better service, not better healthcare, but you have to pay more for it. And so that's a real concern. And so that's not only, the one concern, but also the other concern we just talked about is, what is that $174.70 going to be ongoing? If that keeps rising at 6% or 7% ongoing, you're going to have a high cost. And then if you reach a higher tier 2, it's just going to add double the trouble. And so that's something that we have to be aware of, but that's how your Medicare Part B is going to be calculated as we plan for this moving forward. So those who have been diligent savers, as I've talked about at the beginning of the video, are the ones who are truly going to be impacted here. And the reason why is because you're going to have your higher amount in Social Security. If you're married, you're going to have 2 Social Security amounts. You're going to have these RMDs, right? Required minimum distributions. Remember at the beginning of the video, if you have $1 million saved up and tax deferred, your RMD at 73, if it's $1 million, is 4%. That's going to be about $40,000. If 4% withdrawal of $1 million is going to be about $40,000, but maybe you're 60 years old with $1 million. Well, by the time you get to 73, your account's probably going to double by then. You're going to have $2 million. Now your RMD is going to be $80,000 plus your Social Security. And then if you have a pension, again, it's going to be even worse. And so that's the type of people where these Medicare premiums are going to really impact. If you have not been a diligent saver, you maybe don't have as much saved up, you don't have a pension, you may not be impacted by this at all, because as you can see on my past slide, $206,000 or less for a married couple, or $103,000 or less for a single person, you may not be impacted today with this. Now, you could be if they lower those limits, which again, we could suggest could happen, considering that we do have the troubles that we've been talking about. And the Congressional Budget Office has put together over 100 different things that they can do to raise more revenue, because we are $35 trillion in debt right now. And obviously Medicare is going to be a huge funding, we're going to have a lot to fund for Medicare moving forward. And so those are some of the slight changes they can make to get more revenue from this. So we have to be aware of that. But most of the people who have to worry about Medicare and Aunt Irma are those who have been diligent savers. And so if that's you, you're going to want to start planning now. So now we have to transition to, all right, let's stop talking about all the doom and gloom. Let's talk about what opportunities we have. How can we take advantage of this? Now we're talking about Uncle Sam, right? We talked about Aunt Irma, but now Uncle Sam, we have to do some tax planning to get Aunt Irma, to reduce Aunt Irma's impact to our retirement. And one opportunity we talk about often that's really simple to do is what's called a Roth conversion. Now, I say it's simple to do, but I'm actually going to take that back. I'm going to say it's simple to understand, but it's really hard to maximize or do the optimal amount. It can be easy to do. You just have to fill in a form and it's done, but are you truly going to be converting the right amount? And this is when we move money from an IRA to a Roth IRA. And if we do that, we're going to have to pay the taxes now. So why would we want to do this? Well, let me just give an example. Let's say, again, you're 60 years old and you've got $1 million. Well, if that's you, if you don't do anything by age 73, you don't take from it, you just let it sit, cook, bake, marinate, well, as long as you get at least a 6% return there, your $1 million is going to double to $2 million. And now your RMD, as talked about earlier, is $80,000. Well, what can we do differently from now until age 73? Well, maybe now while we're age 60, we do this Roth conversion while tax rates are lower right now, but also before these Medicare premiums are factored in. And so if we can start to get some of this done over the next 3 years, for example, and especially the next 2, because tax rates are going to be lower until 2026 due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, here's another video here that you can check out to make sure that you have been planning for that. And if not, make sure you catch up on it to make sure you can get ahead there. And so if that's you, the earlier you get started, as I talked about earlier, the more you can set yourself up for success. And so, we often have a rule of thumb for Roth conversions, but we also just talked about it. But those who have that $1 million or more saved up, that's when Roth conversions are going to start to make more sense. If you find yourself with $250,000 to $1 million, you could find yourself in these Medicare problems eventually, especially if you have a pension. But if you have $1 million or more, you're going to be getting there to that Medicare premium, a lot quicker, especially with a higher amount in Social Security. Now, if you find yourself with $2 million or $3 million or more, Irma's probably going to bite you pretty hard. And so, it's probably going to make sense to get ahead of it now, as we've been talking about throughout this video. And if you like what you're hearing today and you just want to learn more on how Medicare premiums, work and how all this plays together, I actually wrote a book, and one of the chapters in there is regarding Medicare premiums and how we can do tax planning to reduce Medicare premiums. So I gave you a little glimpse of what that looked like today, but we'll actually, if you want to request that book, we'll actually have our team send that out to you. So if you just go to the description below, you'll be able to see a link there to click on and fill that out, and we'll actually mail you out a book and make sure you get the help that you're looking for there. And so, we didn't write that book, I always say, to make a ton of money. We want to try to get it in as many people's hands as possible. And so if you're looking for more guidance or more help, I know obviously since you're watching this YouTube channel, you're probably take your education very seriously and you want to make sure you're maximizing your retirement. And so that's something that we'd love to do for you there. And just make sure you subscribe to these videos and keep watching and share if you can. And we'll try to spread the education as much as we can there. And another fun one for you, I'm actually writing a book here, and it should be done here soon, but it's called The Midwestern Millionaire. And so this will be the 3rd book that I've written. And this is about that person who has Midwestern values, which you don't have to be from the Midwest to have Midwestern values. We've got clients all across the country who have Midwestern values. And that's someone who has been a diligent saver, someone who is frugal. So we often say they're better savers than they are spenders. This is someone who's been hardworking, and these people have accumulated a net worth typically of $1 million or more. And so if that's you, you're going to find yourself in a different situation. You're going to find yourself with more opportunities, like we talked about in the video today, to make sure you're maximizing, to make sure you're taking advantage of it. And so if that's you, you find yourself in that position, I would highly encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel, because that's where all these videos are geared towards. It's geared toward that Midwestern millionaire who wants to maximize things, who wants to do better with their planning moving forward. So with that being said, that's all we have on today's video, and we'll see you on the next one.